So this is Getting Geeky with PowerShell Notebooks. Honestly, this is kind of a session that's been put together from a lot of different pieces and from playing with stuff in this for a couple of years now, because it's been, I think 5 years since notebooks first came out for functionality in VS Code. They started with, what were they originally called? .NET Interactive Notebooks. Then it was Polyglot Notebooks. Then it got rebranded to Jupyter Notebooks is what it was Jupyter first, and then Polyglot is at least the pack that has all the extensions that are in it. We'll get to that when we jump over into actual VS Code. And basically, it's just been pretty cool tooling to see all this that's there and that's going on. You can do some fantastic stuff within the notebooks themselves. It's one of the places that I actually went and started learning a little bit of Python to start playing around with them a little bit more, mostly because they natively integrate with a bunch of Python stuff, including virtual environments, which I've really started learning because having to install Python once and get everything working was bad enough. Having it break and having to figure out how to fix it was even worse. And yeah, basically I would use the old school before I had any get skills method of smash it, delete it, and then start over. And that burned a lot of time. So I started learning a lot of things about playing with notebooks after that, just because of the fact that all the things I did not know about Python became easier to work with inside of this thing. Plus having the actual Jupyter server where you can kind of host everything as like web pages is pretty cool. So let's go ahead and get to thanking our sponsors. It makes me very sad, along with at least one other person that I know in the room, that, two now, okay, that there's no Pure logo up here this year. So sorry, y'all. We should have paid for at least one bar tab. So we'll work on that for next year. Thank your other sponsors. Seriously, it is tough to be here as a sponsor and a member of the community, especially as a sponsor that didn't actually sponsor this year. But for those of us that are active in the community, that are user group leaders, or that are just contributors that happen to work at a vendor, it's kind of a difficult role to fill this week. And these people are here most of the time still doing their day job for at least half the day. That's why you see a bunch of people sneak away and take calls and things like that. But it is a ton of work to sell community to a vendor when it's really hard sometimes to like naturally figure out what that actual return on investment is. Anybody that sat in Don's last session, somebody had asked the question about like, how do you get people on board if they are not liking your ideas, or if it's not a thing that they naturally want to go do, and you're not their direct boss. And he kind of led into you have to not only convince their boss, which is hard because now you're going to management to try and talk about something that's happening within your operations or your process of your team, or you have to win hearts and minds of people. And again, for a lot of the folks that are on the vendor side, they don't necessarily get it. So please go out and thank the sponsors. Also, make sure that you ask them if you can have extra swag if you want it, because they will be glad to not have to pack that stuff and take it home. Like, there's nothing worse than the trudge at the end of one of these weeks to like have to go find the FedEx office with a giant box of like socks. Not fun. We had the disadvantage of actually having to take stuff to our office a couple blocks away. So we were like trudging through the rain with it to like go drop it in a closet somewhere, and then found it the next year. So that was, anyways, thank your sponsors. All right. Who am I and why am I here? So I'm currently a consulting field solutions architect at Pure Storage. I cover our cloud product, which is nice for me because I've spent 20 years primarily as a customer, actually, that actually dealt with everything in the data center, everything from servers to networking to storage, and then automation around all of it, and pretty much every platform you could run on top of that stuff. Then having to figure out how to make it all work at scale in a couple of global environments, and then sharing that stuff with other people. And then, I was at a customer shop that went to the cloud and came back in 2016, 2017. So that was a fun adventure. So now I'm actually in a role where I can help a lot of people as they're trying to figure out what to do, because if anybody's kept up with the news for the past 2 years, a lot of people have been concerned with what they're going to do with their platforms for a lot of things. I'm also a co-leader for the Denver PowerShell and VMware user groups. I did actually pick up a Veeam user group last year as well, but I haven't, I've been stretched a little bit too thin, honestly, so I'm about to drop the VMware user group and lean in on PowerShell and the Veeam stuff, just because I like helping people, and those are some awesome communities to be connected with folks. Sadly, I am a serial collector of communities. I now, have the mark of being an international speaker. I got to go down to Australia for a couple of weeks 2 years ago, which was fantastic to get a 2-week paid trip to speak for 2 45-minute sessions about stuff I would have done for free online. So, yeah, seriously, contribute to the communities. We absolutely love it. Those of us that speak all the time, or those of us whose friends of ours have to listen to us all the time, would love to have new speakers up here on stage doing the workshops and things. So volunteer, be willing to come contribute and share things with everybody, and it will massively, massively accelerate your career. If you did not watch the session in the room with Don, go back and listen to his session of the 20 years of community building. As me and one of my coworkers, who's one of my best friends that dragged me into all sorts of community stuff back there, Mike Nelson, everybody wave at Mike, hey. We were sitting in that room, and honestly, us having been involved in community as members or leaders for 20 years, we're very much nodding in agreement and thinking like, man, it would be awesome if we could just package this up and show people how valuable this stuff is. If you are willing to contribute and give back to anybody, even just because they ask a question, I have all the time in the world to help you, right? One of the questions I asked Don in the hallway afterwards was about his Be the Master, right? Because I read all 4 versions of the book as he made edits to it. He converted that book over to a Manning book, and it was then How to Drive Your Tech Career. I'm totally blanking on the title of that one, but he had to retitle it. But the original version of the blog article that he had about this that came out in 2018 was Be the Master or Get Out of the Way. And basically, if you're only ever going to consume these things and not ever give back, we don't want to give you our time, right? It got a little more polished, right? And it really turned into him giving this gigantic methodology of being the master is more along the lines of the journeyman apprentice, journeyman master journey. But he always touts teach whatever you can. If you can just teach somebody how to change a tire or change their oil or whatever it is, be willing to give that back and help somebody else. Because admittedly, everyone in this room would have to say someone at some point helped you in your career, whether that's personal life or your actual job, and they were giving of their time, right? So be willing to do that for other folks. I'm pretty easy to spot when I'm floating around. Typically, you can find me in some sort of colored hat for the day. There's also a gigantic grin on my face and a stupidly loud howdy y'all. I have very little, or depending on where we're at for the bar that night, no shame whatsoever. And really, I try and share my learnings with others, even particularly what has worked for me and what has very clearly not worked for me. If we can shortcut the learning path for any person, it's absolutely worth the time that you've invested into breaking all sorts of things. If somebody can get to that lesson without having to go through that pain, right? There might as well be some benefit out of it. So I kind of go with if life gives you lemons, then make lemonade, but then share the recipe with somebody else so they can just get to that end result quicker. Always push yourself, always try and learn more, but don't fear sharing, right? Even if it's all the things you have screwed up, you can show somebody 10 different ways not to do the thing you're trying to do, right? That's super helpful sometimes for people to just understand that they are not the only person that is having problems or struggling with stuff. There have been at least a dozen times in my career when the only value I lent to somebody was admitting that I was no good at something either, or just being able to put someone in contact with the person that knew the answer, right? Because either they shared it with me or I said, I don't know, but here's somebody who probably does, or, oh, their friend is the person who wrote this thing. So like they'll give us 5 minutes to just explain what we're doing wrong after they finish chuckling at us. Sharing your knowledge and like your perspective on something is important, because as many times as some of us will give the same presentations or the same topics over and over, we may explain something in a different way that someone does not get or does not understand, right? But the peer that's right next to them that sat in the same presentation has an idea or has a way that they think about it that's different. And you might be better in sync with somebody based on your shared experience, your shared knowledge, or background, or anything that you bring to this. Even kind of going along with Jeffrey's point earlier about mentoring, be willing to be a bit of a mentor and a mentee to everyone, right? Just understand that at different points you are giving or getting things from other people, and be willing to share that stuff with others, right? The good and the bad. And just whatever it is that you are doing in the way that you explain it is very important, because you're going to reach different people than one of the others of us giving these presentations would. The best way that I kind of heard this explained, like, you know, Don always talks about how he can typically break any sort of technical conversation or technical topic down to comparisons with a vehicle or something. And I always have a running joke for talking about soft skills and communications. For a lot of us that are too techie, we end up relying on what we know and what we're good at. You know, if you're trying to tell somebody something can be one or the other, you'll say it's binary, right? If you're talking to a developer, it might be like a Boolean instead of a binary. But I say, if I'm making a joke about binaries, I'll, you know, talk about ones and zeros, you know, but by the end of this, I lose half the audience. Some people laugh at the beginning for the ones and zeros. Some people laugh at the end because they get the 50% joke. I talk to somebody in leadership, right? Even IT management, they're probably like, yeah, whatever, nerd. You know, don't get it, don't care, right? But explaining something as it can be a light switch, right? Or if something can only be one or the other, or only moving in one direction or the other, explaining it as like lefty loosey, righty tighty, right? People can visualize and picture those things. You understanding that you have a different way of explaining that stuff, or just thinking about it differently and giving somebody else your thought process is very, very important. So I know I always ramble in my intro slides, but these things are definitely important. This is the style of conference where everybody can actually benefit, and most people are here for the first time from what we saw. I mean, at least 50% of the audience, it seemed like, was here for the first time, which is awesome. So a lot of these things we want to make sure that we share, and especially for people that we can catch early on. Like these are awesome life lessons if you can learn them without taking 15 years like some of us did to really catch on to it. Job versus career is very, very important, right? Your job belongs to your employer, your career belongs to you, right? Again, your job belongs to your employer. That might change tomorrow. They have to let you go. You decide you're going to leave. You get hit by a bus, whatever it is, right? Sadly, you're going to be replaced by somebody at some point, right? It might be like Missy stepping back from doing the content committee, and it takes 2 people to backfill for her. But we're all replaceable, right? Whether we like it or not. We're not completely interchangeable geeks, but they will find somebody to go do the job. Drive your own career and go do the things that are important to you, and bigger things, right? And honestly, I just like to contribute. I want everybody to have these sorts of interactions in the groups and with the technology. I don't want anybody to get left behind on these things, and so this is why I contribute to a lot of the stuff that I do, which leads my wife to ask, what the hell is wrong with you, and why do you volunteer so much for all these things? You know, user group leader, Microsoft MVP, VMware vExpert, Veeam Vanguard, Tanzu Vanguard, and a Cisco champion. All that stuff has been fun in my career, because this has like led to some of the greatest friendships that I have, and being able to help people at the same time, pretty awesome. Also led to some decent pay increases, and lots of extra invites and getting help at a much higher level for a lot of the things that I'm working on. Most of these, I will say MVP takes a solid amount of effort to get on the radar for, but the rest of these things, honestly, we're just being willing to give back, right? Being a decent person and helping other people can easily put you in a spot to be part of every one of these types of communities, and it's not a ton to give back. Brown Bag I'm doing less with now, but like we had a bunch of us in the tech community that even started a Wednesday webinar series that's been going for gosh, like 9 years now or something, to just freely have people that are like the best in the industry give, after hours webinars for folks that are trying to do stuff. So there's tons of outlets out there for you to give back and do other things. I mostly just don't want anybody to have this sort of reaction, right? And that color scheme is way off, but yes, don't let any of this stuff scare you, right? The giving back or the technology, we're all in it together. I'm gonna screw this up for my own presentation and we will all survive, right? Audience participation for the day, nobody dies. Got it? Okay. And this is one I enjoy. I get a chance to tout about it a little bit. The thing that I do with the other hat that I wear off on the side is our local dads group actually started up a community outreach program. We actually have a 501c3 that's been incorporated for 5 years. And we have brought in and paid out about $1 million in charitable donations that have even just run through our organization. Unfortunately, a lot of it is through tragedy and things like that, but I lead our mental health program for the group, and I'm helping out with all of our grants and basically talking to vendors because of the fact that I have to be a sales weasel for the day job. And I've gotten decent at presenting and getting people to chuckle or feel bad enough for me that they will just throw money at me to get me to go away. So use your skills to go do real things in life. Like seeing my kids play on a playground that we were able to contribute a couple $1,000s to because we did a fundraiser over a weekend. Awesome stuff. With that, we will go ahead and get out of the slides and get to some code. Because I'm sure I've already got Mike in the back tapping his watch at me. So let's see. Okay, so show of hands, who has actually done anything with notebooks before? Hey, awesome, cool. All right. For anybody that's never seen these things before, these are cool. I normally start with some of the ones that you can find that are out on the Microsoft site. They've started putting up a decent amount of stuff in SQL. You can do some Azure examples, especially if you get into SQL for all the data stuff or like data science. Tons of notebooks that are out there for you to go through and just follow along with things. So this was one I just Googled, found a GitHub link, and just downloaded the thing, right? For anybody that's not ever seen the structure of this block that's here, that will collapse, should collapse, there we go, with all these cells here. This is just a block of Markdown, right? Straight up text that you can do Markdown formatting for. But if you expand some of these things out, you'll get code blocks as well. So for some of us that do presentations around a lot of this stuff, we absolutely love the fact that you can have Markdown and code in the same document, right? Not only does this make really good flow for a lot of presentations, like we don't have to have the 9 different tabs open for all the demos that we're doing anymore, or jump back and forth across a couple of different versions of scripts by even doing branching in Git. You can show everything here, and what you have here for your documentation with the code, not just comments in the code, can absolutely be what you deliver to other folks, right? So I love starting to use this for training for people, or using it to actually be something that drives the process that everybody has to go through, right? Before you run this code that's here at this section, you must do these things, right? Understand what this is going to do. If you don't do this, it's not gonna work, right? That's just great experience for people when you can go build your code, but based on the way that these work, there is no need for handling a lot of prerequisites in the scripts themselves. One of the nice things about this as well is anybody that hasn't started doing it should start working on making your code standalone, right? Don't rely on an environment or thinking that somebody has something set up correctly. Even if you're running your own NuGet servers, even if you're running your own internal PS repositories to share files, do not assume that somebody has what they need instantly available to actually run stuff. Doing things like running things in a polyglot notebook makes it super easy to have everything self-contained, right? These can run with their own environment variables that live in here. These run without a user profile. So if it runs here, it should run essentially anywhere as long as you have whatever you need for credentials or connections accessible from wherever it is you're actually running this code. So that's very nice to have just for not having a ton of baggage the way that you've got to ship around a bunch of things with just straight PowerShell, and especially when you are trying to teach somebody how to use these things, even just assuming that either somebody has a box that's working properly and will import a module, or that somebody would understand that that's what they should do before they try running a command, right? PowerShell will implicitly go import the module if you go looking for something or start trying to like type it in for help. But you can do some simple things in here, like just put in the best practices of expanding everything out. Similar to all of your standard PowerShell scripting, please don't put in aliases. Please don't, like don't play code golf in this, right? Somebody else, okay, Corey, don't lose at code golf in this, because that you were close, but not quite there. Sorry. This is the fun thing about also like presenting to people that you know and friends. Like you can heckle each other in your different sessions. Super awesome. Feel free, yeah. If you're gonna throw things, just make sure they're soft. That's all I ask. Fortunately, I don't think anybody brought tomatoes, so okay. But yeah, this is great to just have as something where you can basically have an assumption that no one has any background that is going to try and run or view what is in your code. And again, everything can actually be contained just all in this one file, right? So it's kind of fantastic to do that. And seeing some of the examples that Microsoft has started putting up, like it can show you some pretty good things around the way that they are trying to ship this to different people and make it accessible to folks that are just gonna go find some code on GitHub and run it in their environment, because that's what's gonna happen, right? Somebody's just gonna copy paste things. With it being Markdown, you have a lot of things that you can do inside of here. If anybody's working in GitHub a lot, there are a couple of minor tweaks, but for the most part, the Markdown is essentially the same as what you're gonna get with GitHub Markdown. So you can put in tables, you can put in lists, you can put in all of these things, and I encourage a lot of folks to even just start with this being your documentation and your running code all together. Because again, it can live in the same file. You can version all of these things. There are even APIs, and Doug Fink had actually put together a PowerShell module to drive the notebooks themselves, including a couple of functions to actually be able to take one commandlet to run a notebook and then pipe the output either to another notebook if you want, or to capture that and like export it directly to Excel and some other things like that, which makes it super handy that you can have somebody run the code and you don't have to worry about the fact that that logging only lives there in that file. Somebody else has to open it up to look at it. You can ship these things elsewhere. So some of this stuff is pretty great. Let's go ahead and, for those folks that have not run this before, we're going to go ahead and start from scratch, okay? So I'm gonna open up a new VS Code window to try and get to my WSL box, which does not have the components installed that it should for this. So when you're starting out, all I have inside of this profile is the extensions. Number one for remoting, just because I'm doing WSL into my box. And then the only other thing that I've got is the Polyglot Notebook pack that I can install in this box. Really? I just had you running, come on. So once WSL actually like loads and we can look at VS Code inside of here, really to just run the Polyglot notebooks, you have this single extension that's here. And inside of this, it's got a dependency for running Jupyter and I think one other subset tool, the cell tags or key maps or something. But by installing this one extension pack, this will put everything that you need on a system, whether it's your system or on a remote box via SSH or WSL, to be able to start using these Polyglot notebooks. Again, if nobody's ever seen this before, there are a ton of languages that you can use inside of this thing. Anybody who's doing C# or F#, Grody's not in here, but he does tons of F# as well. PowerShell, JavaScript, SQL, Custo query language, Python, R, or anything that's HTTP, you can do a bunch of API stuff inside of here and basically make it like an interactive Postman script. all of that is supported inside of a notebook. You can run all of this code in the same notebook, right? This is not like you have to have one notebook that runs Python and one that runs SQL. You can just have your code blocks that will run all of this stuff sequentially. Hold on, I gotta obviously get this box going because this is just not running in the background. Let's see if I can just get my 2004 box. If it'll load up, it'll be fine. What is going? Cool. If I killed my laptop, that's gonna be awesome. Let's go to PowerPoint. Yep. Sweet. All right, live debugging. This will be fun. Let's close all the things. If not, I might have to switch laptops real quick. That'll be real fun. All right, let's really try and break stuff. Might as well. I mean, what's the worst that's going to happen? Wow, really? Apparently should. All right, 2204 is running. Come on. Come on. Let's go. Man, oh man, oh man. What is it, shutdown? I think that should just kill everything and then restart it all. All right, no bad juju from anybody. No blue screens. Man, something is killing the memory. WSL, come on. And it was kill Explorer too. That'll. No Explorer, no PowerPoint. Live demos, always awesome. This is where, if he were here, my teammate would tell me, this is why you have a recorded demo. You know, that also requires you like actually have your stuff done ahead of time. So, order of operations. Because now I will absolutely go record a demo of this so I have it for next time. So, no, I probably won't. Come on. You know what? Let's kill it the bad way. Shh, it'll be fine. Oh, really? Shh. Yeah. No, I said I believe it would actually work last night. Man, oh man, oh man. All right, cool. Let's see what we can do. Whoop. Driver can't load. Oh, process hacker. Yeah, that's fine. Close the window. Okay, let's see. Maybe it'll reload this time. Yeah. Again, when it works, it's fine. It's, yeah, right, you know. Yeah. I know, I should have done this via slides. Man, we're getting close to the point, for those of you who know the joke, like I normally start these sessions by saying if everything goes sideways, we're doing this via interpretive dance, so we're getting there. We are getting there. You know what, let me just, here, we're gonna reboot this thing real quick, because why not? But yes, getting started with the Polyglot notebooks, not super difficult. You will need, I said getting started, not making them work once you already have, a live demo going. That's a different thing. But really, you need the one extension inside of VS Code, and then you need .NET. The current one is SDK 9, I think. Yeah, right, yes. If you want to download the full package, you can do .NET Interactive. The pop-up menu that actually shows you that you need something on another system will be for SDK 9, and that's like the page it'll forward you to, but do whichever version you want, if you want the full or the lighter SDK install. And all you need is to get those bits on a machine and then restart VS Code, and then you'll have a interactive notebook. We'll see if this comes back up real quick and try it again. Guess I could have left it up for the reboot for the recording, just to show how badly I screwed it up. But. Okay, getting there. Come through, kind of. Yep, maybe. There we go. Wow, that really messed up my icons. Okay, let's try and get this going again. I actually don't have power up here either. Interesting. Got all sorts of stuff going wrong today. Okay, so we will try this again. And at this point, all I'm trying to do is just get into my WSL box, which may take a minute because it's got to fire everything up and connect in. For anybody who has used the notebooks before, what are y'all using them for? Because I'm always interested to hear what people have discovered they can do with them. Other than, fine, code golf, great, sure. I mean, it works. It's, you know, it's easy to ship around. Notes? Yeah. All right. I heard notes and I heard troubleshooting. I have had more success getting people to work on documentation by showing them that they can put the documentation and the code together. And honestly, I've heard some people that have had really good success selling it to their IT leadership by showing it in a way that anybody who has access to the things that the notebook covers should be able to run that code. And it's literally, you can give it to your boss and have them interactively go try and do stuff, and it should work. Okay, so I've got my Ubuntu 2404 box up. Let's connect in real quick. And yep, I will go try and load just this demo blank Python notebook that I put in here. So the extension for these files is IPYNB, right? Interactive Python Notebook, because that's still what these things are underneath. One of the first things it's doing is trying to detect the kernel in here to basically determine what is actually in that environment. So it's going to have an issue and say, the Polyglot Notebooks extension now requires .NET SDK version 9, right? So you can install if you want and then reboot. I am not going to do that. I'm going to flip over to my other box and got everything on 2204. Then I will go shut this thing down in the background because I don't want it to wipe out on me again. And for this one, same thing as well, right? It's going to launch. You can use notebooks within any environment that you have, right? Whether you're running remote SSH for connecting into boxes, if you're using WSL, if you're actually doing tunnels to another box that you have, or you can run these within code spaces on GitHub as well, which is pretty fantastic. But we will get into that once we, let's see, I'm gonna kill off, 2404, there we go. Shut that one down. Okay, so open a folder, and I'm now on my 2204 box, and I will just get into my code environment and see how much junk I have on here. So inside of this one, I will open a new editor once it connects. Being able to interactively run the code now actually follows the same workspace trust settings for VS Code. So you do have to trust either the entire workspace or at least the folder that you are in for these notebooks to be able to execute code. So inside of here, I will go ahead and create a new folder. We'll do demo, and we will create a new demo.ipynb. Hopefully I don't fat finger it this time. Okay, so it's got everything loaded because it at least just has the .NET SDK that's in here. There are different sources for kernels. If you get into it, there are a ton of different options that you have. You can kind of think of this like being able to load different I don't know, the way somebody kind of tried to explain it to me that did not stick with me at all was like having different components for the engine underneath it, but it's similar to basically having kind of a modular environment where you can load different things in the back end and don't have to load absolutely everything you could possibly use for each of these environments. Like if you're gonna be running just a specific version of Python on a box, you can do that. The other thing that you can do with these, let me get into the actual WSL box itself. I'm on, 2204. Let's see. Code. Let me bump up the font a little bit on this thing, and let's do virtual environment. Fark. I'm blanking on the name. Hold on. Let's see. Because I did it on my other box. You know what? Let's see. If I can get into Tailscale, we can make this super easy to just... Yeah. If it'll work this time, then we'll be there. Because I can just remote into my suite. Okay. Here, we'll just read to help. Tell people do this all the time, so why not? Okay. This is what happens also when your environment is like down. What, man, seriously? Jesus. Sorry. Get into the interpretive dance yet again, so I'm sorry. Okay, let's try this again real quick. Again, this is part of why I am, wow, what? Can't find, jeez. Okay, sweet. You know what? Yeah, I'm not gonna just keep messing with that because I will spend all day here trying to troubleshoot things. Okay. What should happen, in this box is like if I set up a virtual environment that's running a specific version of Python or has a requirements text file that has loaded all the things that I need for a particular package of things, you can see every virtual environment that you have inside of these remote boxes. So you can set up the environment that's underlying what runs here to a specific Python version. Way more relevant for a lot of the Python stuff, but if you are using tools that require Python or that require a kind of sandbox environment where you have everything similar to a container loaded inside of a virtual environment, you can direct your notebook to run inside of that environment. I get a lot of use out of that just because I am absolutely barely knowledgeable enough to be dangerous with Python. So I set stuff up once and basically do my best to not just blow it away and screw it up the next time. Starting with a blank notebook, if you actually have Copilot loaded up in VS Code, you have the option to use chat to start generating code. I've played with that a handful of times and it got just weird, so I got rid of it. But when you start with the new Python notebook, a Polyglot notebook, you can add Markdown or you can add code. That's what every block of what you're gonna have inside of here is. You get the option to add another block below it for, again, Markdown or code. When you're in each one of these options, you're gonna be able to just type everything in that you want. Let's do heading 1 and move it back into edit mode. Come on. I don't know why it's not giving me an extra space here. Wee. Okay. I must have a conflicting keyboard shortcut as well. Cool. You're gonna have 3 different modes for every block that's here. You're gonna basically have the unselected, I think is what it's called, which means just everything is static. You're not doing any edits for anything that's on the page. You're in edit mode if you click on the bar to the left for your Markdown blocks that are here. And then when you have a code block, you can actually get to the point of having an action status, right? So if I put in a code block here for, let's see, let's just do, I think it's, I don't remember what folder I'm actually in on this thing. Here, let's copy the path and just list this thing out so we can see what's in here. There we go. Oh yeah, other slashes. With a code block, you can actually execute this thing. So you can just tell it like, go find the suggested kernel that's in here, install that extension for Python on the back end, and it will go run it because that's what it's detecting in this WSL box. If I run this on just my desktop, I can put in just PowerShell code. It will understand that my box has the .NET SDK version 9 just that exists there, and I can run PowerShell code all day long, and it will go detect that as the language. If you want to go change from auto detect, instead of having this at a script level, you have this at a code block level. So if you want to go get syntax highlighting for any particular bit of code, you can have this for every code block that you have inside of here. So again, if you're running things back and forth between Bash or PowerShell or SQL, you can have all of this self-contained in a single Python notebook, which gets really handy if you're running this from, say, jump boxes or central management boxes that have everything you possibly need inside of them. Let me pull up my notes, make sure I'm not missing anything else. Are there, well, I should just put it this way. What questions does anybody have that has started working with notebooks or is not certain if this would solve any sort of a problem for you?
I don't know if it's a question that's sort of a problem, but in a polyglot notebook, there are two file formats. We talked about the differences, or the DIP format, and there's the Jupyter.
Right. So there's a question about the two formats for the polyglot notebooks, and I honestly don't even remember what the term is for the other version. I typically use the Python notebook style, the Jupyter notebook style, because of the fact that I like having these be able to run on a box that if I put the role on it to run a Jupyter server. Okay, here it goes. Now that it's finally loaded everything in WSL, sorry, before I forget, this will show you like what you have for the specific Python environments that are here, and even specifically the path for each binary if you want to run it. So I will just have this thing run here. It's detecting this thing, and now it will actually go run the bits. Whee! Wow, really? IPy package now too. Sweet. Yeah, I obviously should have rerun this thing since like last week because this is having all sorts of fun. The reason that I typically stick with the Jupyter style notebooks is if I have these notebooks that I'm working on in a environment where I'm doing editing, that they're gonna live on a different server, I like the fact that I can install a Jupyter server similar to like a web server that's on there, and those notebooks are accessible in a web format with the same exact code of what I have here to run on that box. The other form of the polyglot notebooks, really, I've only seen people that have used them for data science for those ones, and it's typically folks that are running some super in-depth R code or things like that, or I know somebody that uses them for trying to take a lot of things that come out of MATLAB and then do processing for some data parsing stuff and put it on the back of it. It was totally outside of what I would basically use them for. So that other format exists out there. I prefer, typically, since I'm using this for either training or like interactive code runs, I stick with the Jupyter format. But I'm interested in digging that up if I can find it and covering it. So yeah, this is running just, clean notebook inside of a WSL environment now that it finally has all the bits loaded. Again, even when it doesn't work while doing a live demo, as naturally it should, Doing this in VS Code, and especially all the changes that have occurred in the last 5 years from when we started with the .NET Interactive notebooks, it makes this stuff very, very simple to do, right? Even with this running on a WSL box that apparently had nothing that it needed on it, it makes it very interactive to just say like, oh, hey, I tried this next thing and it didn't work. Do you want to just install this package, right? So getting started with these things is not the end of the world unless you're doing it on stage. So, haha. Let me start up a new VS Code window just on my box. Nope, still got this one here. Cool. So now let's just go ahead and dump some stuff into a demo folder. Let's go to my temp directory and we'll just work here. Nope. Wow, sweet. Okay, go to my code directory. All right, here's my massive bundle of stuff that I have that I probably don't need on my laptop. So if I create a new demo directory here, nope, don't want a workspace. And inside of this, create a new folder that is the demo.ipynb. Why did it not? There we go. I do also like that as soon as you actually get the correct file extension on here, it will flip over and show you that it's a Python notebook, because I fat finger that all the time. So it's nice that it will fix it for you. On my local blocks, similar thing as well, right? So I have a code block, I have a markdown block. If I want to go add in code and do git-process and then run this, when it goes to look on this environment, I've got either .NET Interactive or Python environments. I want to run this in .NET because I want this to run basically as if it was just straight Windows. Let's do boop, 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 boop. Where are you? Auto detect. Fun, come on. Why are you not giving me my option for, oh, did I put in a mark? Yeah, I better, let's see. Because I put in a markdown block, right? Hey, look. That's what you get for not paying attention. Cool. So code block, go run git process. It is, oh my God. Sweet. This is awesome. Well, fun. Okay. Let's go ahead and flip over to something else that I can actually make work at least. So, Jeff saw me like actually be able to get some real nice real world usage out of notebooks at PSConf EU in 23 because of the fact that I'd seen a session about it here a couple months prior, had never really played around with it a whole lot, and then I saw somebody else that had some super awesome code, and when they showed being able to run a bunch of different blocks of code to flip back and forth between looking at output from running something in PowerShell versus Bash on like a Mac, I was like, ooh, that's pretty cool. Like to be able to do like side-by-side comparisons without actually having terminal open and running like side-by-side. It's pretty fantastic. The other benefit of running a lot of this stuff is the fact that you can have the code output from previous runs give you not only the length of time that it took for this to run, but what those results are. Fortunately, after like one of the big large dinner events that we had that night, we had some free time, so I ended up actually going back to my room to play around with notebooks. And the next morning, it kind of saved my butt because my lab environment went offline about 7 minutes before my session started. So I'm over in Prague trying to call my wife, who's about to take my then 10-year-old son to Philadelphia for his birthday. And I was like, hey, can you go in the basement and like reboot all my stuff in my server rack? She was like, no. So, and of course she followed it up with the like, have fun doing your interpretive dance, click. Because she hears all the terrible jokes and loves ragging on me for them all the time. All right, this is, sorry, just no script that I have, so it's gonna take a couple of iterations to get this thing set up and running. But off of just an old version of code that I have here, my last commit to this thing was from 2 years ago, right after that conference. I just started up a code space, right? So code space is firing up right now. You get, I forget, 60 hours or something of code spaces monthly on GitHub that are like free currently. And whether you have it through any professional organizations or anything, or if you have it just through the free tier, you also have the ability to run Copilot for any of these things. But the thing that I loved the most about this was I actually had the code from the notebooks that I had run the night previously. So when everything went sideways, when my entire environment was just completely offline, for a walkthrough, I at least had what was the previous runs of code to see how long did all these things take and how long were the how long did it take to get through everything here. These are, wow, sweet, these are not loading either. Why is this not? Okay, let me see if I can open my local copy for this one. Yeah, being able to still show a previous run of code and see exactly how long the execution times for everything were was fantastic. Oh, I bet it defaulted to a different code space type. Here, we can do it in Jupyter Lab. That'll at least come across better for the display. So this Jupyter editor version is more similar to what you will get if you're actually running this on a box that you install the Jupyter server on. Think of it as having an old school interactive web page that had ASP.NET, but with a front end on it that actually looks like what, I don't know, maybe if this then that, or not if this then that, Node-RED, to be able to look at all this stuff. So if a user is actually going through to try and consume your notebooks, and if you're running them on a Jupyter server, this is the experience that they will get, right? Just an interactive web page that has everything here. It's actually got your code, it's got your notes, it will do your full markdown formatting. Okay, this one's finally loading. So this is what saved me last time, right? I at least had all the code from everything that I had run sequentially, along with all the results of everything that were here. This will save in your Polyglot notebooks. You have the ability, if you want, I'll flip back over to this other view, to rerun any bit of your code one cell at a time. You can rerun everything one at a time, or let's see that was my PowerCLI notebook. Let me find that one. This one that's got everything here, if you want, you have the ability to clear a single cell output or clear all of them, right? To go through and just remove everything, or you can do this add cell output to chat. So if you're trying to save a little bit of your code from a previous run, you can export these bits or basically just put them in the chat to be able to selectively pull some of this information out of your previous runs before you delete everything and have it reset. Again, there's also an API that wraps everything for the Polyglot notebooks. So it makes it super easy to query what all is going inside of here and be able to even look at the length of time for each of these script runs that somebody else has used a Polyglot notebook without you actually opening it up and looking at these things. So if you're doing it for reporting, if you're doing it for tracking or trending over time, all of this stuff is here and available. And then again, Doug Fink put a bunch of stuff together to actually be able to drive all of this through PowerShell as well. Yes, sir.
Found the difference between the two file formats, and you kind of alluded to it here.
Okay.
When you have a Jupyter notebook, when you execute the code, the results are stored in the file.
Oh, okay. In the other one, it's
In the DIB file, it's not stored in the file.
There we go. Okay.
So your file size, depending on your notebook, could
Might be,
really big.
yes, right.
But you have everything, it's really all self-contained.
That's, yeah.
I'm
Okay.
doing my presentations tomorrow using a notebook, but I'm using the DIB format, which is fine because I don't need to save the results. I just want you to see them.
Right.
So the file's much smaller and easier to maintain. But I think that's the difference between.
That would make sense. So Jeff was saying what he found about the difference between the file types are the Jupyter format of what we're looking at here, can run your code and save everything, save the output within the actual file itself. So again, everything is mostly self-contained versus the other style of format, you said it was DIB files? Okay. That will basically run your code, but it will not host the results and stash everything here within it itself. So there are additional stream outputs you can even get from the Polyglot notebooks themselves. So if you want to run these interactively, or if you want these to run even as part of a pipeline that you want to capture the results in the file itself for the next time somebody looks at it, but you can also basically tee that object that goes through the pipeline, whether it's CI/CD pipeline or just using this inside of like a master script that's doing a lot of worker operations, you can still capture that output and have it contained elsewhere without having to do separate logging functions or anything like that. You don't have to like query the API of this thing to go get the output of every individual cell and like stack that together. You can just use those separate output streams for it. The notebooks are pretty nice and easy to be able to just export and post anywhere. Again, this gets you to the point of having both your documentation and sample code that you want inside of here to be able to be something that can be version controlled. So even if your code doesn't change, but when you are using this for potentially output of an environment that you're trying to capture something as a point in time, anybody that's used the tooling or any of the platforms in the VMware ecosystem, you know, most people know either the old school vcheck script that Alan Renouf wrote, or the newer vdiagram that came out after that, and then as built report that was kind of the newer, bigger modular one that a lot of people contributed to. Or even something as simple as running like the RV tools to go capture everything about an environment and have it stamped out as CSV files or Excel spreadsheets. This can do similar things for you, right? If you want to have a point in time of what was everything that was running, what was the configuration of all of this stuff, and just be able to have that somewhere. If you want to save that output separately, you can still have all the code in a visible single copy that anybody can look at, again, even from GitHub or anywhere that you're running a Jupyter server. And it's very fantastic to have some of these things, not only for training purposes, but for a CYA of like, my data center is dark and I have to try and recover stuff. Having an external copy of that, kind of a good thing. Don't ask me how I know. Let's see, make sure I cover my notes for anything that's here. With it being VS Code, a lot of the things that you would expect to be able to just easily work with inside of a file work pretty much the same. You can grab code blocks and move them up and down. You can, you know, add or delete cells immediately above or below whatever it is that you're working with inside of this environment itself. And let me get my local copies back up. But I mean, you can work with this code almost exactly the same as if you were working with, say, regions inside of a PowerShell script, right? So you don't have to like unlearn everything you've done in the past to be able to get through everything that's here. Let's get to here's my Summit 25. Let's get to my notebooks. Did I put my, yeah, here we go. Let me just pull up my local version of these to just see. So if I want to edit this notebook that has the old version. Oh, yeah, sorry. That's, yep. Nope. Does it have to be in the same code block? I don't remember. Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm trying to, I don't know why it's not letting me insert a space here below it. Oh yeah, there we go, my bad. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out why it's not letting me insert a new line. My keyboard is taking Alt. Sweet. Maybe I need a new keyboard, so. Yeah, I haven't had to, right. Just don't remember having to do that before, but really, now. I love the timing on that though. That's okay. So now it's at least giving me a PowerShell error that it doesn't like the state of the instance. This is, man, oh man. So fortunately, I have this new laptop that I just bought last week because this thing started giving me problems. So, all right, we'll do our best to get through this. But yeah, when you're working inside of this, if you already have a workflow that's been built into a notebook, like you don't have to rebuild these all the time just because you're trying to like insert things inside of here. And again, if you're doing the construction of these interactively, or if you're doing this with code, because you can actually build out every one of these blocks, you can specify everything to be a specific programming language that you want to have for not only what handles the syntax highlighting, but what actually runs the process on the back end. You can build these out through another pipeline or through automation, right? So having that preset environment, the self-contained runs that you might give to somebody that's in help desk, right? Or somebody who is an operator that needs to be able to run just through a specific workflow, and even have instructions of like, once this is done, here's the output file that it's going to have, and like, make sure that it gets sent to so-and-so, right? Or how to go verify some of these things that are in here. You can build the actual notebook itself and the run of it to get the last output results that happen inside of here 100% through automation. So it's pretty great if you already have a documented process and want to give somebody just a self-contained file that shows you everything that you would determine is like the good state of your environment or the expected results of anything that it is that you are trying to query inside of here. If you really want, you have the ability to add line numbers in here. So if you're really trying to make sure that somebody understands what's going on and want to have a decent sized code block for a lot of this stuff, you can do that. You can add things like a table of contents. It really depends on like how much you want to get into what it is that you're trying to define inside of this thing. I mean, if you really wanted to, I've seen some people that have written essentially books inside of polyglot notebooks to hand over to somebody else. You can also control with some version settings how much code or what results will display inside of here. Like if you want, you can specify, give me 3 results that come back in my object, and then just the standard ellipsis ... and then 3 at the bottom. And the output that's visible is truncated, but everything is still contained inside of the object, and you get this ability to do the scrollable element where it will expand everything inside of here, or you can be able to just see it inside of a separate text editor for it, right? So the user still gets to control what it is that they want to see from this based on what you have as your presets for the defaults inside of these notebooks themselves. Because of the fact that polyglot notebooks primarily came out of a lot of data science things, these are very fantastic for having the ability to do data views and doing tables. It's a pain because I would have absolutely just remoted into my environment to kind of show my, I basically built like a Grafana dashboard of my virtual environment inside of a polyglot notebook to just show like at a quick run, what are my resources so that I can have this thing and either put it in the Jupyter server itself or just have these runs where I can look at them over time to kind of see what everything looks like. Unfortunately, Tailscale apparently decided to like remove itself off my laptop, so can't show that interactively, but I will put that in the GitHub repo after the session itself. Let's see, just making sure I didn't miss anything else. You do have the ability when you are searching through, especially if you're building very large notebooks, you have the ability to filter your search results to the markdown cell inputs, the markdown cell outputs for what's the source versus what's the rendered view of this. And then the same thing for code. You can look at your source code, or you can look at your cell outputs for each of these things in the filter view itself when you're just searching for everything. You also, again, have the ability to do that outline and table of contents, which will show over here. I don't have one right now because I removed all my formatting on it at some point. And let's see, I'm trying to remember if there are any other big points. Yeah, exporting is, let's see. So I want to do an export. Let's do an export as HTML just to show it, and then we'll do an export as, let's go just drop it on the desktop so I can find it real quick. Yeah, so I have the ability that I can take this run of what was here, I can get it to, yeah, 3, 10, 11 should be fine. Yep, install. All right, that is going. Let's go ahead and do an export as a PDF as well. Boop. So if you already have things set up using many of the other tools that exist for taking all of your output from, say, PowerShell to dump into an HTML format or into a PDF, some of this may not be super useful for you, or if you're just dumping things straight out to CSV, same thing. But especially if you are running code of different types inside of this same notebook, and especially if you're doing this to see if there's differences in results or differences in run times for using a specific language or a specific tool set in your environment, having the ability to, again, make this 100% visible to folks that can click around inside of VS Code to just run the bits one at a time or the entire code script, and then be able to still dump it out to an HTML file or PDF. Super useful. I wish I would have thought about making sure I had that on my WSL box, but oop. Oh, really? It's fine. It's fine.
Seems like everything we export to PDF out of VS Code.
Yeah, I forgot it does latex because it's all the math formatting. Really? All right, cool. We'll see if we can get this done. Anybody else? Any other questions other than, like, you know, how did I get so awesome at doing this thing? I'll wait until I have confirmed they're not recording, because that, yeah, it's, you know, no, I've gotten grief from so many people about this because I've promised it for so many years, and I used to work for a different vendor. That vendor's marketing department and my marketing department last year decided to get together at one joint conference that we were at and said, you know, you've told everybody for years that you're going to do this. But the second part of the joke, which, you know, I guess it's getting recorded, but why not, is basically it gets a little bit awkward because of the fact that I forgot the breakaway pants today. So when I get to the belt, it's kind of fun. So, like, those of you in the front row, just maintain eye contact and we'll get through it as we're doing the slides. Oh yeah, sorry. Oop. Yep. As long as I might be blocking it with JavaScript. There we go. Whee. Yeah, where's the packages? There we go. Super fun. Why not? So yeah, I'm sure we'll totally get through this in time. Yeah, right? Totally. Again, yeah, this is just, good Lord. Man, I've not had a presentation go this sideways in at least like 2 months, you know? Well, that one was at least not my fault. I had to go pick up a presentation for somebody else, and it was on like their laptop that, I don't know why in God's name anybody has a Windows laptop that's running like the Dvorak keyboard layout. So I just jumped on it to try and start typing code, and I was like, whoa, what is this? So would have been fine had they warned me. I could have like switched it, but all right, we'll see if we can get through this download. It's only 138 megs. Otherwise, let's see. The only other bits to really kind of make sure that everybody understands, just looking through the notes here. Yeah, I mean, again, built-in documentation, good for storing in memory virtually anywhere. These can be self-contained solutions. You can run notebooks without having the overhead of running things in a container, right? Because again, as long as the underlying system, you don't have to have Docker, as long as it's got the bits that you need, which is typically just the SDK and some particular version of Python for some of the functions that it runs, then you're good to run this pretty much anywhere. This thing might eventually open. 1 second, there we go. But you can also combine these with some awesome things, right? You can combine them with code spaces. You can combine them on a Jupyter server to have this accessible for somebody else to run from just an interactive web page, or run code from a browser on an iPad, right? Without them needing to have anything that actually exists on the device that's consuming this stuff. These go really well if you're actually using them with dev containers as well, because you can have all the components that you need inside of a dev container, and the person using these things can do that through code spaces, or can just get into the dev container and have everything self-contained for what is actually needed for running everything within the notebook itself, right? Without shipping around an entire like virtual machine. Yeah, look for the module that is PowerShell Notebook. I think I pulled up the Doug Fink module here. This thing must be hitting memory limits. It's just pausing every page almost immediately. Yeah, look at Invoke PowerShell Notebook that he has here, and it's pretty fantastic. If you want, again, these can also be run within a code pipeline. So yeah, Doug did some fantastic stuff where you can actually like set a code block to be parameters, right? And parameterize what is in there, so you can feed parameters into a notebook themselves. So you can still run some PowerShell code that basically will inject your parameters into an interactive or to an automated run of a polyglot notebook, and then still capture those results inside of there. As far as I'm convinced, Doug pretty much is just like black magic wizard on some of these things that he comes up with. Some very awesome, powerful stuff. Again, if you're using anything within SQL, or if you're using anything within Azure Data Studio, this also makes it a lot easier if you have anybody that is running any sort of massive data parsing for things inside of your environment, that you can help to build some of those things inside of these notebooks that, again, can be run in an automated fashion, and have those results saved locally, or have them also teed out, whether you're going to use the Jupyter format and keep everything in here and stream to a different output source, or if you were going to run everything in those DIB style notebooks that will contain your code but just automatically move everything out elsewhere. Otherwise, we're 10 minutes left, as I'm now hitting even like power save mode, because seriously, there's not power here. Otherwise, if anybody has any questions, we can go over them. If not, enjoy an extra 10 minutes to go get some coffee. And if you come up with any questions later on, then grab me in the hallway. Nope, got two. What you got, JB?
The takeaway I have right now is that the notebooks are a much more elegant solution for the folks who have long PS1 files that have code break, comment block, code break, comment block.
Yes.
They have the flow that they work through. It's not what it is here. You have to think about things. It like depends on what the results of each block is. Troubleshooting process.
The way I've kind of explained this to some folks, especially from some old customer shops that I used to work with, I said, anything that is a PowerShell script that looks like it either still belongs in an old compressed HTML file, right? Or it looks like somebody, needed to fill up an extra 5,000 lines on Pastebin for some reason. Those are the prime scripts to like convert over to this. Anybody that literally has to have a paragraph of here's what you do before you run this thing, it's probably better in a notebook, right? And especially if you add some of the extra bits like Doug's PowerShell module to be able to inject things like environment variables or parameters into that interactive run of the script, you can have a PowerShell script that runs to just launch the notebook with feeding in those variables or like those credentials. So if you don't want to give somebody direct access to it, or even access to a like a service account password or something, you can have it still launch as that, do all the logging and everything, but the way that somebody launches it is, I've even seen somebody that had a batch file that launched a PowerShell script that launched a notebook to like feed all that in there. I mean, like, it works. So, or we used to have a bunch of tools that were written as old HTA files. So everything was like push button, but you had to do everything in the proper order to make sure that one thing finished before you do the next one. You can have it be all this. There's another question somewhere. Yep.
I think it was kind of answered there, but my question is going to be, who's this for? Who's benefiting from working with this? Is it like data people, onboarding people, support?
Right.
Following a list, check the boxes?
So the question was who's really benefiting from this, and what I'm kind of reading into that is like, who cares? So no, it's self-deprecation just because it's all fun. No, honestly, like this came out of the data science space, right? That's where the Jupyter notebooks originally came from, and that's why it's all heavily Python driven and things like this. It was just the fact that they figured out a few years ago, like, ooh, this is a very useful framework for everything, and you have the capabilities of plugging into it with anything .NET. So this is not even just PowerShell, but we're here at a PowerShell conference, so we're going to talk about the PowerShell bits you can run inside of it. This is useful to anybody that sees value in it. One of the other things that I've started doing for a lot of stuff is to be able to inject mermaid diagrams inside of here, right? So even if you're trying to explain to somebody a concept, to just use this as a learning tool that's a standalone thing, where it used to be a video, or it's just us recording our screens as we're doing some PowerShell live and interactively, you can explain like, these are how these components tie together in a visual format, and just take that and plumb it inside of here, right? Or you can do the automation to build your mermaid graphs that you want and have those just auto injected into your notebooks, or if you're handcrafting those things, again, they can still live inside of here and be handled as if it was native Markdown. So, the best way I think of it is all the things that you wish you had in old school text documentation that you like wanted to put inside of a Word document at the time, but it would blow up because Word formatting sucks. You get rid of all of that heavy lifting with this stuff here, right? And it's 100% code that can drive this or build this thing out, and it still makes it visually accessible to most folks, and it makes it to where somebody just has to know, okay, if I want to rerun this, all I do is go look for the giant play button that's here and hit that, right? So it's you making this more accessible to folks like your help desk or your operations folks that don't know how to run PowerShell interactively at the command line, or that you don't want to have to worry about how to properly construct an environment to do this thing. Just you can have the notebooks hosted on an environment where the back end has all the bits that you need wired up for it.
A use case scenario that I've actually seen this done. Anybody got or work with cybersecurity engineers or analysts or anything like that? So you can actually use this as runbooks that are repeatable. So if they're doing investigations, they can have all the commands and everything that they're expected to do and notes on what they're looking for right there at their fingertips, and it's just something you could hand out to the website. There you go, here's your runbook for it.
Yeah, so Bill just mentioned that there's a great use case for this within the cybersecurity space of using runbooks. I didn't even look to see what time we're actually supposed to be done. I might be totally over by now. But yeah, I mean, similar to the concept on runbooks, right? Again, it's the previous run of the code that I have here for an environment that I've totally wiped this environment like a year and a half ago. I still have that last run that's here self-contained in this file. If you were going to run this same code now and 30 minutes from now, you see what the previous results are, and you can like easily capture those, or just do a visual before and after comparison of not only the code, but when you run these things interactively, it'll actually give you a timer down here that shows you how long it takes to run that code block, right? So even if it's, okay, I'm going to run this thing and it takes 5 minutes because it has to go connect to a database, it's going to go collect some information and it's give me this back in a parsed format or something. It's cool, that takes about 5 minutes. I can go get a cup of coffee, right? So sometimes it's just the realistic. You can make it so that everybody consuming your tool has an expectation of what it should do. So you're not always getting calls about like, hey, I tried to run this script and it's not working, and you spend 30 minutes trying to figure out what's wrong with somebody's environment or something, right? So again, if it's useful, it's useful. If not, so be it. So you only wasted, 90 minutes of your life sitting here watching me try and install stuff on my laptop. But let's see if we can get the export working. Otherwise, any other questions or good to go? Cool. One last shot. Yeah. I mean, I'm not really holding out much hope at this point, but like, why not? So. Yeah. Well, yeah. Ooh, I think it's actually trying at least. Let's see. Whoop. Again, I mean, my biggest selling point for a lot of this stuff for folks is once you get this set up and have somebody that understands what a business process is supposed to do, to have the explanation with the code all together, you can just hand this to someone else and say, here, this is yours now, right? And it actually has the documentation. You can show it at least ran the last time. And yeah, okay, fine. Export failed. Haha. Oh, we got one. What did we get? Got the HTML file. Yay. Cool. So yeah, so here it is in HTML format, right? And still gives you pretty much the same visual view for what's here, just without the interactive runs. So, this is a decent thing as well if you are trying to take a notebook that you have newly built and want to get one run. If you're using this for again, classroom or like initial training view into an environment and trying to teach somebody like a new skill, or if they're new to a virtual environment, if they're new to managing SQL or things like this, you can have somebody who knows what they're doing build out the workflow, run it, export those results, and just have a snapshot. I do know a couple of people that do this basically daily, so that anybody that wants can just look at like the daily snaps of what happens inside of an environment. So there you go. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Here's the investigation, or even better, here were all the exposed passwords I found, and just check that into GitHub, and that's my takeaway. Expose all your secrets and just put them out on the internet, folks. All right, y'all. Thanks for coming out.